Cold open question of the day, Brendon Kleen. Just getting us some Lakers SEO for the top of the pod today. That's really what this is here for. But also some NBA news we can talk about. Darvin Ham is out, as I think everyone saw coming. This happened right as we finished recording the other day that he was let go. Some of the names, but not all of the names that have been linked to this job in the aftermath of Darvin Ham's firing. In no particular order. J.J. Redick, Tyronn Lue, Mike Budenholzer, Kenny Atkinson, and Wolves assistant Micah Nori. Is there a name on that list, Brendon, or another name that is out there that moves you in any real way for this Lakers job?
The short answer is no. I think the lesson we all should be learning from the Bucks, the Lakers, the Suns fall in this camp right now, is that if you're considering firing your coach or you actually fire your coach, you probably need to have a leading candidate at least in mind before you do it. And you hear this idea out there that the Lakers are not interested in another first-timer because they were not impressed with Darvin Ham, I guess, because of his inexperience or some limitations, some shortcomings due to that inexperience. There's not another better second go-around, third go-around experienced head coach out there. You think Mike Budenholzer changes the fortunes of this team? I don't really feel like the roster makes sense for what we know he likes to do. Kenny Atkinson, sure, he's experienced. He's never coached deep into the playoffs. He's never led a championship team outside of obviously being around as an assistant with the Warriors.
And they passed on him last time. I mean, he was a finalist for that job, and they went with Darvin Ham for whatever that's worth.
So, I mean, the short answer to me, if I was just to pick a coach, Chris, is like somebody who is this smart, innovative, young up-and-comer, but that's what Darvin Ham was just supposed to be. So it feels like they're chasing their tail a little bit here.
I mean, my take is that I think that the Lakers' job is not so much about like who they hire, whether it's Micah Nori, whether it's they're the team that does this Redick thing that keeps getting leaked. The teams are interested in him as a head coach, whether they could get Ty Lue from the Clippers, whatever. This roster, it's not going to matter who they hire nearly as much as what they do with the rest of the roster. Like, yes, a new voice that maybe isn't worn out in the locker room in some ways. Okay, like maybe that helps. But I think the bigger issue is that I don't think any of these coaches are going to be set up for success, assuming LeBron and AD and everyone's back, unless the roster is like upgraded in a real way. I think whoever gets this job could face a lot of the same challenges Darvin Ham had, and the same challenges Frank Vogel had, honestly. Like, they're going to have these issues, and this is also just a job that it's like the big European soccer jobs at this point. This is not a job that you should expect to be in for more than like 2 years. It really feels like it is just like you get in, you do your time, and you try to win, and if you don't, or if you don't win enough, you get going. So I kind of really just empathize with whomever gets this job because it's not going to be easy, and even if you're going to get paid a lot of money, and that's what the money's for, shout out to Don Draper, what are you really being set up to accomplish unless the Lakers actually revamp this roster in a way that I don't know if they can?
I'm not even sure. I mean, do they pay more than other teams? I don't even know if they have that advantage. I think
what were the PP loans even for, Brendon, if not for coaching salary, you know?
Couldn't tell you, but I just think they don't even have some kind of we're going to blow you away with money type of thing sitting there. So I think people just take this job because it's the glamour franchise, it's LeBron James, and it's one of 30. And good luck to them.
Best of luck to whomever takes this job. No idea who's going to get it. No idea who the right candidate is. It really depends again on the roster. Mike Nori would be fun. I enjoy Mike Nori quotes. I wonder if he would have the Mike McDaniel, like, where Mike McDaniel stayed weird. Would Mike Nori stay weird as a head coach? I would like to find out. And LA would be a good market, I guess, for us to find out. All right, on today's show, Cavs Magic finally ends, and the Cavs are moving on. We've got Nuggets-Wolves Game 1, which was awesome and lived up to all of our expectations, and 2 series previews for you. That's today on the Just Basketball Show. Hey there, welcome in. I'm Chris Manning. That is Brendon Kleen. This is the Just Basketball Show, your not 1, not 2, but 3 times a week show covering all things hoops. That's NBA, WNBA, the draft, free agency, everything hoops. We've got it covered. WNBA, by the way, is coming. We've got Caitlin Clark preseason games. Brendon's getting texts from me that he didn't respond to about Cameron Brink and Rakea Jackson cooking in the preseason for the Sparks. We're out here. It's great times in the land of basketball. If you haven't already, subscribe, rate, review on your podcast app platform of choice. 5-star reviews only. Subscribe on YouTube. Hit that notification bell as well. Brendon, let's start with Cavs Magic Game 7. Cleveland wins. They're going to face the Kristaps Porzingis-less Boston Celtics in round 2. And really, this game was, I think, Brendon, an encapsulation of the series in a lot of ways, because Cleveland was, frankly, the worst team. They had the lowest of the lows. Donovan, they were awful in the first half. I did not feel like they were going to win this game. They turned it around in the third quarter with a big advantage there. Donovan Mitchell was the best player on the floor for the most of this game. A game high 39 after he had 50 in Game 6. Orlando's offense, by comparison, lost all of its juice, and it just absolutely fell apart. Particularly Franz Wagner gave Orlando nothing in this Game 7. But Cleveland's moving on. Orlando's done. 7-game series done. First round is over officially. So what stood out to you from that Game 7?
Well, one, it's funny. You watch 7 of these games and you analyze, you think through each one. Guys play well, guys play poorly, everything. Jared Allen injury, whatever. But I picked Cavs in 7 on this one. I think you did too.
I did.
It feels like it kind of went as we all expected. Some really ugly offensive moments from both teams, some inconsistencies, some inexperience showing. But ultimately, the team with the best offensive creator and the best talent overcame all of that ugliness and was able to get a home win in Game 7. So, big picture, I'm not hugely surprised. You mentioned the comeback here. Orlando was up 18 with 4 minutes and 10 seconds left in the second quarter, which means that they were outscored by 30 over the final 28 minutes of this game. And that's pretty ugly. So
third
the Magic offense failed like we thought.
Yep. Third quarter offense. Can I give you some shooting numbers for this quarter just real quick? Because it's pretty bad.
For the quarter?
It's pretty
bad.
bad.
Give it to me.
For the third quarter, when they scored 15 points.
Yep.
16.7% from the field. 18.2% from 3. 5 of 6 from the line, which really, the free throw line really did them a lot of good in the first half, particularly for Paolo. Shooting numbers player by player. Jalen Suggs, 1 of 5. Franz Wagner, 0 of 6. Paolo Banchero, 1 of 7. Wendell Carter Jr., 1 of 4. Markelle Fultz, 1 of 1. Jonathan Isaac, 0 of 1. Nothing from those guys.
Yeah. But look, I feel like the starting point for Game 6 and 7 is Donovan Mitchell.
Oh, yeah.
You know, he came 1 point short of Allen Iverson's record for combined Game 6 and 7 points in a playoff series. He had 89. Apparently AI had 90 at one point, I think in 2001. We've talked about Donovan before, on and off air, plenty. Being that he's on the team you care about.
You're also I'm going to say this, and I mean this gently and lovingly. You are the captain or like the co-chair of the Donovan Mitchell Skeptics Committee, I think.
Are there a lot of people who are incredibly high on Donovan Mitchell that I'm zagging on? Would be my counterpoint to that. You make it seem like I'm zagging on Nikola Jokic here.
No, I think within like I think I would say it is like among like big NBA nerds and people who do NBA shows, I think he is like properly rated, and you're on like the lower end. And I think among the casual fan, they think of him as like a little. I think he is like Q rating with like your average NBA fan is probably a little bit higher. Would be what I would.
Okay.
Would be my guess.
Well, I'm going to say something good about him is where this was headed. Obviously, it'd be a little haterish of me to come on and continue my normal tune after what he just did. So, look, I think this guy's playing hard as hell, I would say, all things considered. And maybe I'm overreacting to the one cutaway shot that ESPN was able to get on the broadcast today of him with Garland on the bench.
I was going to bring this up. If you didn't, I was going to bring this
up to the level of what they needed. But to do all of that and score the ball like a superstar needs to, given the uncertainty, I think even after this series win, Chris, that still awaits this Cleveland team in the offseason, you have to give it up to Donovan Mitchell for that. To play this well, play this hard, play hurt, and not even know if he's going to be on this team in 2 months, not even know if this team's going to be together anywhere close to its current form in a few months. I admire it, and he really showed a lot, I think, down the stretch of this series. To get them their first playoff series win since LeBron. I mean, that's huge stuff, even if it's a little bit of a weird path to get there.
Yeah, and I think Brendon exemplifies the toughness that this team didn't have last year, that this team, I think, didn't always show in the series. I think the way he was constantly, like his engine got revved all the way up in the second half in a really big way that they needed. I mean, it's not the whole thing, but it's like where Paolo looked exhausted at the end of this and just had nothing left to give. I'm sure Mitchell probably feels the same way, but I think you kind of felt him rise to that empty gas tank just a little bit more, and that does matter on the fringes of these really tight series. And I think the Garland thing is real. I mean, the one on top of on the sideline one, the one that stuck out to me was fourth quarter. Darius Garland misses a corner three. Cavs get an offensive rebound. Mitchell gets it back to Garland. Garland hits the three. He was a very clear celebratory talk to my guy, rev up my guy kind of moment, like a leadership moment from Donovan Mitchell as the guy in this team. Should also give, I think, some credit to JB Bickerstaff for just abandoning George Niang and leaving him behind, leaving Marcus Morris behind in the second half.
I'm not giving any credit to JB Bickerstaff.
Look, I'm just saying, at least he bunted. It's a bunt single, but it's he hit a single, and in a series where he was 0 of 30 with 30 strikeouts, at least that in a game 7, good for him. He did at least that. Okay. Very lean rotation in the second half. It's not I'm not. He's still on my fall guy list, Brendon. Absolutely, they lose to Boston in 5. He's probably still looking for a new job, and the Cavs have already been linked by Mark Stein to Ty Lue, trying to bring him back. So that tells you something in its own right. But look, very lean rotation in the second half. I don't think this team, to spin this forward, is going to have much for Boston. I think they're going to look exhausted on Tuesday. It would be my guess. Boston's going to be rested. The personnel matchups are really tough, even if Boston is down Porzingis. But good on Cleveland for at least winning a first-round series and doing it the way they did and showing some toughness when I wasn't sure they had it at all.
Yeah, we've talked about Paolo, I think, a lot, and he's obviously the story coming off of this series. And I think there's a question to be had with him about whether his inefficiency and turnovers are more a product of the Magic personnel right now in the first couple of years of his career or the way he plays and his skill level. I think we'll find that out when the personnel improves. But I do think at a certain point you just have to lean in the direction, I think, in a guy's first playoff run in his second NBA season to say, you put up 25 plus 30 almost in a series at age 21, I think you're doing something. And so my biggest concern for Orlando coming off of this series is Franz Wagner. 18.8 points per game on 41% shooting from the field. And, you just look at his shooting, which came and went big time, depending on what week or month you were snapshotting this season. But he ends the season in the regular season with 28% from deep. And then in the series, it's going to be below 30. And if he doesn't have a three-point shot, I think it's a real question what that player really is, especially heading into a contract extension opportunity this summer.
They have a very pivotal summer ahead of them with the cap space, with, I think, wanting to build on this year. He would be at the center of that. I mean, he is one of the test cases, Brendon, of guys who were really good on as rookies kind of just get max deals. Just throwing that to him, it's a real bet on him figuring all of this out. And I know injuries hampered him this year. I know that was as a thing. He had some good moments in this series, but Game 7, I think he's
getting a max.
I don't think so. I
mean, he wasn't really good as a rookie. He scored. Do you mean as a rookie or on a rookie contract?
Oh, on a rookie contract. I'm saying on a rookie contract. Because Darius Garland got it. I know it's different organizations, but I think about Darius Garland getting a max.
Darius Garland is a lead offensive engine. He plays point guard. Franz Wagner is a wing who can't shoot right now.
I know, but here's my only point. I hear everything you're saying. Garland got his off of like one improved season and then one really good season. It wasn't like he had like, it wasn't like super clear exactly what you were getting. And I think of these rookie scale extensions, Brendon, no matter if it's someone like Franz, someone like Garland, I think a lot of times they are like they are slightly inflated based on bets of what you're going to be. And it wouldn't shock me if he just got like something, even maybe not a max, but he gets a lot of money in part because they're still betting on him figuring some stuff out. That's really my point here. If it's
I'm
a
not
max or not, whatever.
I mean, we're kind of getting distracted from the point. I mean, what they choose to give him is more based on where they drafted him and what happens, like you're saying, on these things. Me saying ahead of an extension wasn't me saying they're going to cut him and let him go to some other team. I just meant how good is he going to get on the length of that next contract? What are you looking to build around? And what is a player who is 6'9", but not an incredible athlete, not an incredible shooter? Can he create his own shot if that three-pointer and pull-up three-pointer is not there? Is his passing good enough to make up for that? Is his ability to be a great team defender, but not always, he's not going to be anybody's idea of a stopper. Good at a lot of things, not great at anything is a odd place to be, and I think that's just kind of where we are with Franz right now, coming off of his first playoff run. So I think a lot of this, I wouldn't say gets solved, but looks a lot cleaner if they can get some difference makers, especially on the perimeter this summer for sure.
Yeah, agree. Can't wait to talk about them in the summer. A team, obviously, people that have been following along, we covered on our segment Waving the Flag, where we wave the flag and dive into teams really love. They were Eastern Conference representative. We've already talked about this a little bit. I don't think they're going to be our pick for next year, but I still will love the Orlando Magic.
Can't duplicate. There's too many fun teams, so goodbye to the Magic. I mean, we had a great time.
Well, the team that, Brendon, we've discussed picking for the West, I think we might just want to camp on that island for like 5 years. Would be my take. Like, I just want to learn French.
It's fair, but
oui.
Cavs you got to get the up and comers. By the end of next season, the Spurs might be like the 8th seed, and then they're not really. Nobody's going to need to be waving the flag for them. That's kind of the idea. Is like, hey, we're underrepresented, we're championing this thing. Whereas Vic just got a Nike commercial today. We might already be too late on that one.
Yeah, that's true. All right, just very quickly on next round, quick pick, reaction, whatever you want to say. I don't know if you have. I'm just going Celtics in 5. Boston's way better, even without Porzingis. I don't think this is going to be particularly competitive.
Well, yeah, I figure you guys might do. You guys are recording on. Oh no, Tuesday is Game 1, so we're not going to be able to preview this series. What a tragedy! No Boston Cleveland breakdown. I'll probably say the Celtics will sweep.
Yeah, Cavs aren't as good.
That's probably disrespectful given what I just said about Donovan, but he is hurt. So again, it's like. It's awesome that he's playing through that, but he also is ailed. So I'm not going to, bet on that to continue. Guys do break down. Just ask Jimmy Butler last year, right?
Yeah, and how can you trust the Cavs to just be normal? They weren't normal against Orlando. Are they going to be normal and competent against Boston, who's arguably the best team in the league? Probably not. That's a tough bet. All right, Nuggets Wolves Game 1. This is, Brendon, why I love play. This is what I want. This is just like the encapsulation of what I want in playoff basketball. We're going to do 5 things that mattered in Game 1 to break down this game. A Wolves win on the road in Denver. And we're going to go 1, what I'd say is the biggest, to 5, which is the lowest, and we can jump. We're going to jump around, do some tangents, all that stuff here. Number 1. Anthony Edwards and his playoff journey are happening and continuing in front of our eyes, and this is the superstar rise of Anthony Edwards happening right now. 43 in Game 1, monster off the bat in this game. Defensively, just hopping around, doing all kinds of stuff, which something he's gonna have to really work defensively in this series and just stay engaged against what Denver does. It's gonna be a test for him. I think he delivered on that end in Game 1 as much as he needed to. It's building off of him being the star in a lot of ways of the first round. And he's going to, I think, get to do... the Nuggets did a good job in the second half of really making things hard on him. I think denying him as easy of looks as he got in the first half. But when he got the mismatches he wanted, he got the matchups that he could take advantage of, had a little bit of rhythm. He looked awesome and delivered. That guy is the moment. He is him. We need to stop comparing him to Michael Jordan because we shouldn't be comparing anyone to Michael Jordan. I just want to say that for the record. But this guy...
What happens when somebody plays almost exactly like that player? What do we do then?
It's just Michael Jordan. It's just it's like I don't want to hear anyone plays like LeBron or like it gets a little dicey. Is all I'm saying. It's maybe the greatest player
I'll
of all
give you
time.
some homework then. If we're not allowed to do that, you got to tell me who the comp is instead, because we like history, Chris. We like to say this is like that, and what can we say about this player's path compared to that player, and it helps us make sense of this stuff. But I think it just speaks to I think the part of the MJ and Kobe comps that are happening, Chris, is really maybe more than anything this positional similarity and play style obviously being there is how early he's doing this. This is age 22.
Yeah.
And he's already feeling like a player that you really can't fully quiet down. You can't fully stop. I felt like coming into this series that that there was nobody outside of potentially Aaron Gordon, which I think is one thing the Nuggets left on the table through the entirety of game one. We didn't really see them panic to that adjustment, which I don't blame them for. This was a close game. But I didn't think Caldwell Pope or obviously Murray or Christian Brown or anybody like that was going to be able to stop him in single coverage. Anytime he got to isolate, he scored in this game. So that's already like, okay, that's the baseline. What do you do beyond that? You saw him solve the hedging that Jokic is going to do to him. You saw the team adjust and run a lot more side pick and roll versus middle pick and roll to create even more space. And once he has those angles down, that is another way to manufacture it. Only had 3 assists in this game, but most of them were in those situations. He's going to get his in transition. He's going to get like 6 or 8 points in transition or semi-transition almost every single time. And you could see him figure out in this game that even though we don't think of Jokic as some kind of huge difference maker on the defensive end, the way the Nuggets play him in that hedge coverage or blitz coverage, it does end up making another player beat them. Ant's going to have to give up the ball and then hope he gets it back or that another great shot comes off of that. But if he just goes before Jokic is even set, before the Nuggets defense is even set, he doesn't have to worry about that. And he's going to be able to get layups and dunks at will, it feels like, in those moments where he chooses to push. So you said 43 points. Is it possible this was a quiet 43? That is outside of the very end of the game. This wasn't flashy, dump it to Ant, watch him go to work, the assassin is going to, operating. He just kind of took what was there and did it efficiently. And that's the sign to me of like, probably just have to assume that Ant's going to average like 30 plus in this series.
I think, Brendon, that's the scary part if you're Denver to some degree, right? It's that like it wasn't Ant having to hero ball himself to 40 and set a new playoff career high. It was he read your defense, he took what was there, and yes, there's some great plays and he has to deliver and execute and all that stuff, but it wasn't like he just hero balled this and was hitting tough midi after tough midi after tough midi. It was like he read your defense, figured it out, adjusted, and took advantage. And just like he ate the food that was in front of him. He didn't have to like make something from scratch. That in itself is really impressive for what he is. As long as this Wolves team is in the playoffs, that team is must watch. He is must watch. All right, number 2.
Hold on, I have something on his defense really quick here.
Okay,
because you made it sound like this was like a questionable game for him on defense. I think they're using him as a weapon. Like they're mixing it up and choosing to put him on Murray.
No, you misunderstood. That was my point. That's my point. My point was that like when I was thinking about the series, I think I underestimated how much he was going to need to just like move off ball, defend Murray, defend shooters, do all that stuff. It was clear from the very first possession when he forced a turnover with his defense that he is a weapon on that end of the floor in the series and is locked in on that end. That was my point. I didn't mean to, if that was misunderstood, that's my apologies. I agree with you. He is a weapon defensively in the series, which actually builds into my second point. Number 2, the varying looks that the Wolves threw at Jamal Murray. Anthony Edwards, Conley, Jaden McDaniels. Yes, Murray has the calf thing. You notice we had a sleeve on it. They threw every version of the looks, and there's probably some more they still have, but they threw a lot of looks at him. I think an idea to never let Murray get fully comfortable. He's Jamal Murray. He does this in the playoffs. He had a couple big moments. But all in all, not the Murray game that I think Denver gets when they are absolutely at their best. And the Wolves, with Ant, with Conley, with Jaden, they deserve all the credit for throwing those looks at Murray and being prepared to try to get that guy out of his rhythm and what that can mean as a trickle down for the rest of Denver's offense.
I would add Nickeil Alexander-Walker in there.
Yeah.
I think that one thing I've noticed even dating back to the first round where this group of perimeter defenders put the team that I care about in absolute hell is Nickeil Alexander-Walker is a good defender. Mm-hmm. I would say a very good defender. But you see the difference. It almost speaks to McDaniel's greatness as a guy that can fight through screens and blow up, starting at half court, what a opposing guard is trying to do. It speaks to how dominant McDaniels is at doing that. The sigh of relief that teams get when Alexander Walker is guarding their lead ball handler. The idea that they would be like, oh, we have so much space to deal with. When Alexander Walker, who is also like a miniature tank out there, is out there, like, I think that's just, it highlights the exhausting way that you have to try to deal with Minnesota, that an A-minus defender feels like such a sigh of relief versus an A-plus defender. But yeah, with Murray, I think the most success that they had, he started 0 of 6 from the field. I believe he had a baseline jumper that he normally makes, was his first shot of the game on the left baseline. And then he had basically a layup. And those were his first 2 shots of the game. You'd think that's pretty perfect for what Denver would want to get him going on. He misses those. He misses the next 4 after that. The best thing I think that they went to that was working is no less exhausting than what I was just describing, but they may just have to kind of do it, is multiple screens and rescreens at a time. You know, whether that's him starting off ball and then running him through a pin down into a dribble handoff type of look. He got a free throw line jumper off of that at one point. Whether that is just a 2-man game with Jokic where Jokic is rescreening like 2 or 3 different times over and over before they actually start going downhill. I think that's just going to be the reality of what this is, because the Wolves are used to, hey, we're going to have KCP set a staggered screen with Jokic and force a switch. No, you're not forcing a switch. McDaniels is not coming off of Murray in those situations. So they're going to have to be more focused and determined and specific if the goal is to get McDaniels off of him, because I think with McDaniels being so good and Murray being hobbled, the idea that he's going to be able to score on him is probably not a reality right now.
And Brendon, tell me if you think this is unfair or not. I think that to whatever degree they can solve this, I do think that will be a bellwether for the rest of the series. And because they're going to need Murray to get loose, to get hot, to have at least one big game, I think, in the series to beat the Wolves. 6 of 14, 2 of 4 from 3, 4 assists is like, that's an okay night. But I think against this team in this moment, they're going to need like a 30-point Murray game, at least one of those, and some.
They're going to need him to do that every single night.
I think at least
who else is doing it? Big game? They're not winning this series if he only has one big game. I mean, he's their second best player, far and away. No questions asked. He has to be.
I'm talking
consistently 25 plus a game.
Yeah.
I
think 25. I think like 25 as like an average, but I think I'm talking like the one like upper 30. I should not just 30, but like 35, 4. Like one of those games I think is going to be needed. I think one of those just like he is unconscious, he is on fire, he is like the confidence like oozing off of him. Jamal Murray games. I think one of those is going to need to be in the cards, but it's hard. Like I don't think of him, Brendon, as like one of those like classic rhythm guys. You know what I mean? Like a guy who like he can just kind of fall into some of this stuff in a way that doesn't require him to like build. He just kind of, I think, is hyper present. But I do think there's like a rhythm thing with him in this series where it's going to be harder for him just to even like feel comfortable. I think that's like
Yeah,
going to be really
that's
hard
McDaniels.
just to feel comfortable. Yeah, it's big,
That's
but
what
it's
McDaniels
also
does.
yeah, and that makes it
also
really hard
what?
for him. I think.
Yeah,
I mean, it's just I think it's also Ant. I think it's also like the savvy of Conley in the moments he's in him. I think it's also Alexander Walker. I think it's like every little thing is just all those guys are trying to accomplish the same thing, but they're attacking it in different ways. Where it's not even like he can be like, okay, these guys are a little bit different, but like the rhythm is the same. It's like when they swap between these guys, the rhythm of how he's being defended is even different, which I think makes it even harder. It's another
yeah.
layer
One thing I
of
think they
challenge.
can do is have Jokic. I think we will see, because this tends to happen when they play their cards early and have to adjust, is we will probably see Jokic be in the post to start possessions more consistently, because he was scoring off of that basically no matter what player was on him or what the help situation was. Maybe a little less so when Gordon was in the dunker spot and Gobert was just right there at the basket as a helper. That is a little tough, but even then, Jokic is going to be able to score. He's going to be able to get to his spots in the post and force a double team and play off of that, rather than starting possession so often with the ball on the perimeter, either in Jokic's hands, in Gordon's hands, in Murray's hands. They played a lot of possessions that way, and I think that plays into Minnesota's hands a little bit, where they're just getting you to the late shot clock situations. They're able to force turnovers more easily. So a little more inside out rather than outside in, I think, would help everybody, including Murray.
All right, number 3 for me. Michael Porter Jr.'s offense, I thought, was solid in this game. It was good in this game. And I think this game was a reminder they're going to need him in a big way. They're going to need him to be loose, which I think he kind of always is with his shot attempts. That guy has no real no button. Particularly, I think, from 3, Brendon, they're just going to need him to fire and fire and fire. He's really struggled on 2s in this game. Just 2 of 6, but 4 of 7 from 3. They're going to need some comfortable shooting nights from MPJ, particularly just when you think about their role guys and what they're going to give you, whether it's Brown, Reggie Jackson, Peyton Watson. Like, those guys are not necessarily, particularly in a series against the Wolves who have this amazing defense, they're not guys you can, I think, if there's like a percentage chance of they have like a lottery ticket offensive game and they perform really well, it's lower in the series. Porter Jr. is one of those guys that I think could have those nights where he breaks through, gets hot, and relieve some pressure off of Jokic and Murray. And I think they're really going to need him to particularly from 3 do some work. But I thought his process, at least, and kind of largely what he did in this game was solid. But I think there's still room for him to kind of build into it.
Yeah, I think they were really good about, Ann is going to be on him when McDaniels is on Murray. So that is part of the byproduct of how many options Minnesota has, is even their weaker defenders are good, and they're going to take away your secondary options too, especially when you have KCP who, he's involved as a screener a lot of the time. He'll come off of screens. You have to close out on him, but you can put Conley on him and not really fret too much. So I thought Porter Jr. is going to have a more difficult time really creating his own shot or being too involved in the offense when Ant or another really good perimeter defender is on him. But when somebody else was on him, like Naz Reid, Kyle Anderson, Denver found that right away. And there were 2 moments. One was a quick pin down when Naz Reid was on him, or a dribble handoff, I should say, with Jokic at the top of the key in the first quarter when Naz Reid was put onto Porter. And then in the fourth quarter, Kyle Anderson opened the quarter on him. Denver went right into a double drag screen. That created a pin down look for a Michael Porter 3. You're seeing him get more comfortable from 2. He's not just a spot up or one dribble into a pull up mid-range shot guy anymore like he was even as recently as some games last year. I think, he came off of a Lakers series where he was scoring the ball really, really well. He's confident right now. All of that is going to work to his benefit. But I guess my thing would be, I do think there's a limit on that. He can't really create his own shot, right? So again, what are you running that you feel good about that doesn't take too much time or isn't predicated on a switch that Minnesota's not going to give up. You know, everybody's dependent off of that Murray Jokic 2-man game working better. So there's not a version of a big Michael Porter Jr. game that doesn't start with Jokic or Murray being much more effective than they were in this game.
Yeah. Sometimes I this is one of the only few times I ever watched this Nugget team, Brendon, and wonder if the Bones Highland pick had worked out the way I think they wanted to. And I can't believe I just said the name fucking Bones Highland talking about this. But I was wondering what a offensive creator engine type in their system would look like, and if it could have helped them at all, or if a Jordan Clarkson could have been useful in a series like this for them. And maybe we're gonna find out. All right, number 4. I want to put some respect on Rudy Gobert's name and game, because the Wolves do not win this game without him. You can look at his box score; you see 6 and 13 and 4 fouls, and not an overwhelming game from him, but he had 3 blocks, and he had a stretch in the fourth quarter, Brendon, that really kind of helped seal this game. He rolls hard to the rim in the first part of this, doesn't get it, finishes the putback. Next possession, he's defending Aaron Gordon. He had already kind of slid back to be in position for when Gordon gets with the ball. He steps up to help Jokic. He blocks the lob that 9 out of 10 times Jokic is hitting to Gordon there with no effort. He blocks it and gets it. And then he runs the floor the other way. Doesn't get a bucket, doesn't get an assist or anything, but he's helping clear the space against Denver to clear room for Ant. Rudy Gobert has been awesome this year. A real, I think, bounce back year for him in a lot of ways. He was really good in this game, even if he didn't score a ton. His impact in this series is going to be felt, and that guy is going to be. If the Wolves pull this off, Rudy Gobert is going to end up being second or third name we mentioned is how this happened.
Yeah, I'm curious how much he is going to guard Jokic, right? I think that's still a question we have, because their base defense is still going to be that he's guarding Gordon. I think part of what made that play special that you just went through was that he simultaneously was a helper and the guy who recovered back to guard Gordon. Normally, like you said, we see Gordon finish that, but that's typically because that guy doesn't even stand a chance, right? It's a smaller player, and so
most defenders are fucked in that situation. The Nuggets get you there, and it's done. You are on the execution block to get dunked on or have to make a business decision every time that happens. It feels like.
Yeah, and most of the time that the guys in that spot are rendered almost just motionless because they really feel stuck. They don't even end up doing anything, helping or contesting the lob. So for Gobert to do both of those things effectively at one time, make Jokic give the ball up and then actually block that attempt by Gordon is big time stuff. So that obviously has value, but do they go to Gobert in the post more? I mentioned that Jokic was able to score on him, so maybe that actually dissuades them. I think that, again, if the Wolves come out with the same defense, I think Jokic will be more aggressive and more ready to attack it. So how Gobert's defensive role changes, whether he can stand up to Jokic more when he does look to score in the post, is going to be interesting to me. I thought that they relied on him a little bit less on offense than I thought they might versus the Phoenix series, where Nurkic was playing very similar coverage and they were getting it to Gobert on that short roll almost every single time. In this case, less so. They were kind of passing it around the arc or just driving straight downhill and beating Jokic completely in that hedge situation. So there's a lot of things Gobert has to do. It kind of changes based on how the game feels. But yeah, I mean, he is up to the task. He is an underrated player at this point. Hopefully the playoffs are disproving that negativity that he's kind of had lingering on him for a while.
Number 5. The Denver Nuggets are never going to be out of this. I want to just say that this was a B- game from them, Brendon. Somewhere in there. Clearly not an A game from them. They got hit and punched in the face early. And yes, they lost. They ended up losing by 7. But for them, they're always just going to be in it. They got down early. They end up winning the first quarter anyway. Struggled through the second a little bit, as did the Minnesota. Kind of lost their footing a little bit in the third, lost it a little bit more in the fourth, just kind of a half step behind. But they were the team that got put on their heels first, and they just settle into whatever they're going to do. Even on the nights where it isn't totally humming, it isn't one of the most beautiful things you'll see in the NBA, they just understand where they need to get back to, and they default back to that mean just out of habit. Against this Wolves team, that's going to be really vital. It's going to be on Jokic and Murray and everything we talked about to get beyond that mean and win the series, I think. But they're always, I think, going to get back to a place where, like, even if it's tough, they're going to operate in the way we expect them to. And this is why, like, I expect this to go 7. I expect this series to be 5, 6, 4, 7-point games the whole way. And it's in large part because that's what Denver does. And even in games they lose, it's often very tight, very competitive, and they just work themselves back to exactly where they should be at all times, it feels like.
Yeah, I mean, I've called them a perfect team, right? Like, they're not going to beat themselves. So that means that's why they don't really play games in the 120s, because they're not in a hurry. They don't turn the ball over. They don't do things that they crash the offensive glass on their own end. So they don't do a lot of things that create a lot of variance, right? They control the game in that way. They get to the free throw line, which was their big advantage in this game. 16 of 20 from the line, 9 of 12 for Minnesota. So, plus with their defense, the way they play defense forces you to take a lot more time off the clock. Their transition defense is not elite by any means, but good enough. They just don't give you a lot of holes to make a 10-0 run on them in the course of 2 minutes or something. They're going to get their chance to respond every single time. But I mean, they're the favorites in the series, so I guess that probably shouldn't come as any surprise that they're going to have an answer. I mean, they should, right? They're the defending champs. They are the 1 seed, or they are the higher seed. No, they're not. No, they're not the higher seed. They're the favorite, is what I'm trying to say. So they should. That I feel like. Do we even have to say it? I mean, they stomped through the NBA last year. That doesn't feel like a surprise.
No, I think what is so fun about this is they're just going to get asked so many questions in this series, get pushed in so many ways that it's going to look a little bit different. It's going to be tougher in some ways, I think, guaranteed because of the series. I can't wait. I'm glued to the series. There's 2 second-round series we're going to preview. One in particular I'm very excited about. I think this is by far the best second-round series we're going to get. It's not particularly close.
Yeah, no question.
All right. That's it for the games that happened. Let's talk about some games that haven't happened. Let's start with Thunder-Mavericks, Brendon. 2 teams coming from different kinds of series. Dallas wins theirs in 6 against a Clippers team that had some injuries. No Kawhi, obviously, for much of that series, but went a little longer, pretty competitive at points. The Thunder just crushed the Zion-less Pelicans, just demolished them. I have a number that'll explain that further, but where do you want to start with this series? What to you is your big question, your big interest point? What is your entryway into thinking about Oklahoma City versus Dallas round 2?
I think it's going to be a series that is largely based on, because these are 2 teams that have a lot of interchangeable parts in terms of how they run their lineups out. They both like to play a little bit faster when possible. So it's going to be cross-matching, switching, turnover creation, leading to fast break stuff. They're 2 teams that play a relatively similar style led by their star creators. That kind of means it's going to be determined by how well those star creators play. So sometimes I think that's a little reductive. Like, I'm not going to look at Minnesota and Denver and say whoever plays better between Anthony Edwards and Nikola Jokic, that team's going to win the series. I don't think that in that series. But in this one, it does come down to not just the top 1 player on each team, but can Shea and J-Dub match what Luka and Kyrie are going to do? Because this is going to be, again, an ISO-heavy series with targeting defenders, and just going to work. Which team can win in that environment better? I think that's gonna tell us a lot. But as far as the margins go, I think one thing to look at is one of OKC's biggest strengths, even to get Shea set up to attack, is forcing a ton of turnovers, and Dallas rarely turns it over. So can that advantage continue for the Thunder when you're already starting to see their three-point shooting slip from what it was in the regular season, a couple different guys? What happens when the Thunder don't have their kind of regular season, we can execute you into a game we can win type of stuff goes away? We know Dallas can win like that because they've been here before. Can the Thunder win against expectation when games and series don't go according to the script that they want it to?
And this is, Brendon, I think the intrigue of the Thunder in this playoffs. This is what you want to see. This is the kind of series you want to see this team in. They have not gone through this before. Shea has a higher number than I think I realized number of games on his playoff resume. Lou Dort has played in the playoffs a bunch as well, but J-Dub, Chet, Giddey, to a much lesser extent, because he doesn't matter as much. Like, any of their guys have not.
And Shea's never played as the number one, right? He was a Chris Paul co-star, and he was a
Clipper.
A Tobias Harris co-star? Is that who would have been the top scorer on that team back then? I think so.
Yeah, that's a weird thing. That's a weird sense to say out loud. As Shea Gilgeous-Alexander was at one point a wingman or a support staff to Tobias Harris.
Yeah,
it was
the Harris and Gallinari teams, if I'm remembering right, the Clippers team.
Yeah,
with Patrick Beverley and Landry Shamet and whatever else. So
probably
he's never had to be this guy. He's never had to go toe to toe with Luka Doncic and win a close game down the stretch on the road, right?
And it's Mark Daigneault's first time coaching in a series like this, and like they weren't really pressed at all in round one. Like, they just weren't. OKC had a defensive rating in the first round of Brendon. This is from NBA.com. I found the stat doing some research for the show. OKC had a defensive rating of 93.5 in their sweep of the Pelicans. That is the lowest mark for any team in a playoff series of the last 8 years. They just mollywopped them with defense. I don't think they're going to have that kind of defensive level against Dallas, but can with Shea, with J-Dub, with Dort in the torture chamber, do they have like enough defensive bodies and structure to like at least make the points for Dallas really, really hard? And does that, to your point, does that help them navigate that side of the ball when it goes off script a little bit? I think that is going to be like a fascinating little sub battle there between these two teams.
Yeah, so the Thunder are 20th in defensive foul rate. That's one weakness on their team. They play an aggressive style. They're dropping in and dipping in to cut off your drives and smack at you and everything else. So they're going to foul in addition to forcing a lot of turnovers. They're sending smaller guys to be low man helping at the rim. So that naturally is going to lead to them having to whack somebody if they can't actually contest or block a shot at the rim. We know the Mavs, especially Luka, can really pile up free throws. So I think that's somewhere where you could see the Thunder be a little bit pressed. Both of these teams, especially post-trade deadline when the Mavs got Daniel Gafford, have been very good at-rim defenses. But again, when that's the Thunder, or on the Thunder side, when that's not Chet Holmgren, this is the most obvious weakness the Thunder have, right? They don't have that big center at the backup spot. Kenrich Williams or Jalen Williams are going to be in there. But the Mavs have two guys who can play the same role. So if Lively and Gafford are both operating at all cylinders and Kyrie and Luka are setting them up and able to kind of break down the defense with their drives, I think those minutes when Chet is off could really be a problem. So I'm kind of leaning Mavs in this series, but my one hang-up would be, like, Jalen Williams has passed every single test that has been thrown at him.
Mm-hmm.
The Mavs don't exactly have a ton of athletic wing defenders once you get past Derek Jones, and if PJ Washington can keep it up, include him. I'm not sure if Exum has the physicality and force that you necessarily need to guard those two guys. Josh Green is a little small. If Jalen Williams can go toe-to-toe... Yeah, Kleber's more of a
yeah.
big on a switch.
I know, but it's
situation.
like,
Yeah.
but it's like another body that Dallas, I think, has relied on, and B, like you would have seen in the switches, and if you're Dallas, you're comfortable with that outcome. And now if that's Josh Green minutes, if that's Exum minutes, whomever is filling in that slot, you're not as cool with that switch by any stretch of the imagination. So I do think like that's a small thing. You're right, he's more of a big defender, but like that's going to matter to some degree on the edges.
Yeah, so they'll probably switch less, and that means Shea and J-Dub will get to attack more drops, which is what they prefer to do. You won't get to see the Washington Kleba lineups that Jason Kidd liked a lot in that first round. But again, if Jalen Williams can match what Kyrie's doing or even what Luka's doing in some games, this will be down to the wire every night, I think. These teams are very, very evenly matched, and again, they play very similarly. So I think it's going to come down to, maybe one of these teams gets hot on a random night. Neither one of them is a great three-point shooting team. Other than that, I do think, again, it's just going to kind of come down to how good can those two star creators on either side be. And that's kind of, you said Mavs Wolves is peak playoff basketball. I agree with you. This is in another way, right? And this is just dudes going head to head.
Some numbers from the regular season. Both Luka and Kyrie played 2 games against OKC, 1-1 in those games. I'm just going to hit you with their averages. Luka, 35, 13.5 assists, and 10.5 rebounds. It's pretty good. Kyrie Irving, 30.5 points and 10 assists.
Mm-hmm.
Also, Kyrie,
those
pretty
games
good.
are a little weird, though. They only played once they had Washington and Gafford.
I know.
And the game at the end of the regular season was those guys
they didn't
sat.
play.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's a tough one to tell, right? Because Dallas changed so much after those trades. And even they played the Thunder the first game after those trades, but both of the new guys came off the bench, whereas now they're both starting. So I think a big thing for me, the same guys would have been guarding Kyrie and Luka.
That was my point. That was my point. It was like those guys didn't have. Like, they're probably going to be fine navigating. Like, they're not going to be phased, at the very least, by the stuff they're going to see as their primary defender in this series.
Yeah, for sure. I think outside of Dort, nobody can guard Luka on OKC's side. And Kyrie maybe a little more, but we know he can kind of find his spots and attack broken defenses pretty well. Yeah, exactly. So, but what I'm curious about with regard to the other side is how much of a weapon can PJ Washington be to guard OKC's guys? Can he do what he did to Harden, for instance, even though Harden is a little slower, a little more methodical, or does he become not really an option? And then, again, Dallas is kind of running out of answers for who they're going to throw at Shea and J-Dub if it's only Derek Jones is really the only one they can count on. That's a tough spot to be.
I am leading Dallas as well. I'm just to be on the record, I'm saying Dallas in 7. I don't feel great about it. Could go either way. I think this one absolutely.
I'm going Mavs in 6.
There.
I think Dallas will handle this one.
Okay. Last series we're going to preview Knicks-Pacers, a 90s throwback series in some ways, but obviously both teams, basketball itself, played very differently now. Brendon, I want to start with the rebounding in the series, because I think that is the thing when I was looking at the numbers, thinking about the series, that's the number one thing that struck me. The Pacers in the regular season gave up the 7th highest offensive rebounding rate in the entire league. So they gave up more offensive rebounds than most teams in the league in the regular season. The Knicks, best offensive rebounding team in the league by offensive rebounding percentage in the league. But in round 1, the Pacers were much better on defending the offensive glass. But contextually, that was against a team that doesn't really offensive rebound that much in the Bucks. And then did not have Giannis to just nab a random offensive rebound here or there. So what does that battle look like? The Pacers statistically better at it in round 1. Do I trust that? Not really, not fully.
Yeah, no.
And then what does that look like now against a Knicks team that hammers the glass and is really, really reliant, as much as maybe not as much as they're reliant on Jalen Brunson and their just overall toughness and grit, but is reliant on offensive rebounding as a pillar of their offensive success. I think that to me is a large part of where this series is going to be decided.
Yeah, I'll go on the other side. New York is 5th in transition defense this regular season, and obviously that's where Indiana wants to get. So So the Knicks can take away the Pacers' biggest strength on the margins. The Pacers cannot take away the Knicks' biggest strength. I think that dynamic, if it holds, tilts toward New York. Indiana's near the top in playoff three-point frequency so far, though, whereas the Knicks are near the bottom. So that's one where if you get a Obi Toppin 4 of 5 game, an Aaron Nesmith 5 of 8 from 3 type of game, if TJ McConnell makes a couple random ones off the bounce when they sag off of him in the pick and roll, and you get a game where Indiana makes twice as many threes as the Knicks do, maybe that gets them a game. So Dallas, OKC, very much a clash of teams with similar strengths and weaknesses. This series, complete opposite teams in terms of how they want to play, what they're good at, what they're going to try to do, what they're going to try to take away. So I think the Knicks should win this series on the margins unless the Pacers get hot from 3. And I think the Knicks will also have the best player in this series. So
yeah,
to me, that's pretty big leaning toward the Knicks. I also think the Knicks are much more equipped to take away Siakam than Milwaukee was. I think OG likely gets that matchup to start games, but set aside the one-on-one, the Knicks are just a much better help team on drives. They're going to have better rim protection. Brook Lopez wasn't really a big factor. He wasn't even on the court as much as I think the centers for the Knicks will be, which I would imagine is going to be 100% of the time they'll have one of Hartenstein or Robinson on the court. So the rim protection, digging in from the perimeter and swiping at Siakam, having multiple guys where they can switch if they want to, or they can get cross-matched to not have to worry about it. I think that was such a weapon for Indiana, especially to weather the fact that Halliburton hasn't quite figured out his plans B, C, D, E as an offensive guy right now. It's a lot of things that favor the Knicks, even though you would think, well, the Pacers will just spread them out. It's like, yeah, but okay, maybe sometimes, but unless you're telling me Miles Turner is going to become, Karl Anthony Towns for a series on the offensive end and be himself on defense, I'm not exactly convinced that that's going to be enough for Indiana.
Yeah, and I think with like Siakam in particular, that where you want him to be defending him when he's going downhill, driving, doing Siakam things, is in the muck. Siakam has the ability to be physical. He has the ability to put his shoulder into you and try to draw contact. But I think of him at his best when he's just it's a little smoother, it's a little more spaced. The Knicks are going to deny him that reality for much of the series, and that's unless they get another break. But as you said, the Knicks are good at transition defense. They're locked in. They don't make silly mistakes and get caught off guard most of the time in those spots. So it's really going to be like, how can the Pacers, if it's even possible, with what their roster is, like Buddy Hield would have helped them, I think, in the series, like just to create a little more room, even if defensively. Like, we know he didn't play a ton against the Knicks for Philly, but having that lever to pull as far as a shooter like that would have maybe been helpful.
I kind of think Siakam does that to himself, though. I think
he
Siakam
puts himself in these holes?
Yeah, I think he's comfortable doing it. I think that's how he wants to play. There could be an opening, and he's going to take his time. He's going to take a beat, and the space that might have been there is going to just close up. I think for better and worse, that's kind of his MO a lot of the time. And when he's in isolation, you can manufacture where guys are standing and how they're kind of moving around the arc to open things up. But I don't know if I think that's just built into the Pascal Siakam experience a little bit, and it's just sort of, can he rise above that? Can he maybe get off the ball and make the right pass if he needs to, and everything else? But I don't know. Maybe I've just been watching him be a Toronto Raptor for too long, and I'm not being fair to him because they didn't do him those favors. But they have Nesmith and Nembhard out there a lot of the time. It's not terribly different from Buddy, in terms of a spot up threat to just space. Yeah. Buddy's 5% better of a shooter than Nesmith or something. I like the motion. I like being able to pull the motion lever, I guess is my point. It's if I can have something where I can maybe clear out a little more aggressively and directly with that kind of shooter, which they don't do with Nembhard and whatnot. You don't really do with Turner. I would like that lever, but it might not matter that much anyway. I favor the Knicks as well. I'm going Knicks in 6, Brendon. Yeah, I think last thing, just in terms of Brunson,
Yeah.
the Pacers will probably put Halliburton on Hart. That's what they did in the regular season. These teams did play more real games, and
Yes.
so it was a little easier to tell. I watched one back yesterday, and that already the Knicks like to use Hart as a screener. If you're putting a bad defender on Hart, it's even more food for them to go at. And so I think you'll see a lot, just like you did in the Philly series, of one of the centers in the short roll, or I'm sorry, in the dunker spot, and then have Hart set a screen, and either Halliburton jumps out to make Brunson give the ball up, or they switch it, and now Brunson can just go to work and attack Halliburton one-on-one. I think Halliburton's just going to need to defend in a way that maybe he didn't have to against Milwaukee quite as much when he could just go stand by Andre Jackson or whoever, fill in with your non-threatening Milwaukee Bucks player on the perimeter. So I would expect Brunson to keep it up. And again, all that stuff, I think we're on the same page. I'm going Knicks in 6 as well.
Knicks in 6. We've both picked the Mavericks. Both picked Boston. NBA playoff, second round, Brendon. We're here. We made it. Let me ask you on the spot, last question. Favorite series of round 1, now that it's done?
Sixers Knicks. I mean, I don't know if there was really another good one.
Mavericks Clippers was my number 2, but that was mostly just because like it was, you got some like brilliant stuff from various guys in that series, but it was just like the stakes and like what was going to happen as a result of that series just felt very palpable in a way that was like, and at least there was better basketball than like there's a lot at stake in Pacers Bucks, but oftentimes the Bucks were like an absolute mess and hard to watch. Yeah. And like some of the other ones were either not particularly like compelling or not good in terms of stakes. So tough. All right, second round's here. WNBA's back. NBA draft is on the horizon. A ton going on in the world of basketball. So now's the time. Tap in 3 days a week. Me, Brendon, our guy Wes Goldberg, coming to you Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays here on the Just Basketball Show. Subscribe, rate, review wherever you get your podcast. Find us on YouTube again. All that stuff and more. Enjoy the hoops. I will be with you with Wes on Wednesday. Brendon and Wes coming to you on Friday, reacting to all the playoff basketball, any slop and trade rumors we get, because it's going to be that time of year in the NBA as well. So tap in, subscribe, enjoy the hoops, enjoy the nice weather you're hopefully getting in your neck of the woods, and we'll talk to you next time.